Today we're going to be talking about using a variety of forms when we're looking at our writing. A genre can be shown in a variety of forms that best match the topic. Think about small moments and how they can generate ideas for another genre. For example, a sports moment could lead to possibly sports fiction, sports reporting, or an informational text. A first crush story could lead to a memoir, realistic fiction, an advice column, a poem, or a fantasy story with other elements, possibly giving someone special powers. Yesterday, you worked to collect ideas and write about some of those ideas. As writers, it's important to explore ideas in a variety of forms. I want you to start thinking about different forms that the stories you wrote yesterday could take. I want to teach you that in writing, genres can be shown in a variety of different forms that match our topics. What would best express what you're trying to say? I want you to watch how I go through my chart of topics, small moment ideas, and begin to think about how I could write one of the topics, but in a variety of different genres or forms. So I would look through my collecting strategies and ideas chart that I made the other day, and I want to find topics that interest me. So look for a trend maybe in your collecting ideas. One that came up in Miss Van Lieshout's writing more than once was track, boys, friends, or nervousness. So she's going to look through her chart and see which one of those topics interests her the most. And she found that she had quite a few writings about boys. So she decided she'd write something to do with that. She's going to think about how those topics, those trends could fit into a specific genre. So she decided she could write about some of these romantic topics, but in a couple different ways. She could write an advice column. She might take the two different small moments that she wrote about Brian Ertmer asking her out at her locker at the time that Rick Fraley passed me, or about the time Rick Fraley passed her a note in 7th grade, and make those part of an advice column because she didn't know how to answer them. Both of these situations were really weird for her, and she was uncomfortable because she didn't know how to respond. She remembers wishing she could ask a friend for advice before answering those boys. So she thinks, maybe I'll make this into an advice column and I'll write the scenarios as questions and then answer them, providing advice to someone in a similar situation. You want to come up with different forms you could write about in that genre. She could write an advice column, she could write a fictional story, maybe a news article, a funny story, or maybe you might even want to pick a different topic and write about informational text. Push your thinking to try to see how your initial small moment could grow into a certain genre, and then push your thinking a little further to see if this moment can inspire other genres. She could write a fictional story. She said, I could also take the small moment about Paul being my best guy friend in middle school and make that into a fictional story. Although Paul and her never became more than friends, everyone always thought they would get married one day. So maybe she thought she'd write a short story where the two middle school best friends end up marrying each other later in life. So here she's going to take people in a moment from her real life to inspire a realistic fiction story. She knows that authors are often inspired by real-life people and events. Maybe she would want to try to write about sports, in this case track, because she's very familiar with track. She could write news articles reporting on the conference track meet. She'd have to go back into her scrapbook and pull out some dates and participants and use her skills as a journalist to dig up some information. But she thinks she could recreate the event by writing about it. She's thinking that once she tries from her own experiences, she pulls from there. Maybe since she knows about the sport and how to cover the action, she could travel to a high school meet and then report on that. You could write a funny story, a comedy or humor about the middle school athlete that pukes while getting ready to run the race. She said she could even think about finding a book about a funny, embarrassing sports story to serve as a mentor text. Yet another form of genre is sports. She could also write an informational text about how to run the hurdles. I'd think about proper technique and form as well as tips to remain calm. She would probably rely on her knowledge of text structures like Process to help her organize this and even get some text feature like pictures to help communicate her knowledge. So today your goal is to start by trying out one of these forms. And by the end of the hour, you'd like to try 2 to 3 forms, throughout the hour. Switch topics, switch genres, forms, and remember the steps. Look through your collecting strategies and ideas chart and find trends or topics that interest you. Think about how those topics, trends, ideas, and small moments could fit into a specific genre. Try to come up with different forms you could write about in that genre. Try out one of the forms within a genre. Off you go and do good work today.